wasn't just a sound. It was a declaration. The sting on my cheek spread through my body like wildfire, igniting every ounce of fury and heartbreak within me. I looked at her, stunned, her perfectly manicured hands still raised, her face contorted in a mix of rage and disgust. "You're a disgrace to this family, Amelia," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. She didn't even look at me. Her gaze burned holes through me, as if I were some ungrateful parasite she had the misfortune of birthing. My father stood beside her, rigid and cold, the very image of authority. His silence was louder than her screams. He always let her do the dirty work. "This isn't just about your behavior, it's about our name," she continued, throwing her hands in the air dramatically. "Do you have any idea what people are saying about us? About you? That the daughter of Michael and Eleanor Carter, one of the richest families in the city, is seen running around with those lowlifes?" I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "They're not lowlifes. They're my friends." My voice cracked, but I stood my ground. "They've been there for me when no one else was. When you weren't." Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I thought I'd struck a nerve. But then she laughed. A cold, hollow sound that made my stomach churn. "Friends? They're using you, Amelia, and you're too blind to see it." "That's enough," my father finally said, his voice calm but final. He stepped forward, his towering presence casting a shadow over me. "If you want to throw your life away, do it somewhere else. As of this moment, you're no longer a Carter." The words hit me like a freight train. "You're disowning me? Over this? Over my friends?" "You've made your choice," he said, his tone devoid of any emotion. "Pack your things and leave. If you want to live like trash, go live with them." My heart pounded in my chest, the walls of the grand living room suddenly closing in on me. I looked at them, my parents, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and saw nothing but strangers. "You'll regret this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "One day, you'll regret everything you've said and done." My mother smirked. "Don't count on it." I turned on my heel and stormed out, tears streaming down my face. The sound of the grand doors slamming shut behind me was the final nail in the coffin. I was no longer Amelia Carter, the heiress. I was just Amelia. Outside, the world felt colder, harsher. The mansion loomed behind me, its grandeur now a cruel reminder of the life I'd been cast out from. I had no plan, no resources, just the clothes on my back and the determination burning in my chest. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Sarah, my best friend since high school. "Hey, you okay? You sound like you've been crying," she said the moment I answered. "They kicked me out," I choked out, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. "What?" Her voice rose with shock and anger. "Why? What happened?" "I'll tell you everything later," I said, my voice shaky. Can I crash at your place? Just for tonight?" "Of course. You don't even have to ask." An hour later, I found myself on Sarah's couch, clutching a warm cup of tea she had made for me. Her apartment was small and modest, a stark contrast to the sprawling mansion I'd grown up in, but it felt warmer, more welcoming. "They're insane," Sarah said after I finished telling her everything. "Who cares who your friends are? They should be proud of you for standing up for what you believe in. They've always cared more about their reputation than about me," I said bitterly. "It's always been about appearances, about being perfect." "Well, screw them," she said firmly. "You don't need their money or their approval. You're stronger than they think." Her words gave me a small flicker of hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was my chance to prove them wrong. But the road ahead felt daunting, and I had no idea where to start. The next morning, reality hit hard. I had no job, no income, and no idea how to navigate a world I'd been shielded from my entire life. Sarah offered to help, but I didn't want to burden her more than I already had. "I'll figure it out," I told her as I got ready to leave. "Thank you for everything. You don't have to go," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Stay as long as you need." "I need to do this on my own," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I spent the day walking around the city, looking for work. Every rejection stung, but I refused to give up. By evening, I'd landed a job at a small diner. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. The first week was brutal. My feet ached from standing all day, and I struggled to keep up with the fast pace. But the other employees were kind, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of camaraderie. One evening, as I was clearing tables, I heard a familiar voice. My stomach dropped. It was one of my parents' friends, Mrs. Davenport. She was sitting at a table with a group of women, laughing and sipping wine. "Amelia? Is that you?" she said, her eyes widening in shock as she recognized me. I froze, the tray of dirty dishes shaking in my hands. "Hello, Mrs. Davenport," I said quietly. "What on earth are you doing here?" she asked, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Shouldn't you be at some fancy event with your parents?" "I work here," I said, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. She gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Oh, darling, what happened? Did your parents cut you off?" I didn't respond. I just turned and walked away, her laughter echoing behind me. That night, as I lay in bed, the humiliation replayed in my mind over and over. But instead of breaking me, it fueled a fire inside me. I was going to prove them all wrong. I was going to build a life so incredible, they'd regret ever underestimating me. The next morning, I woke up with a different kind of energy. The humiliation from the night before still stung, but it had sparked something in me, an unwavering determination. I stared at the ceiling, a plan slowly forming in my mind. If my parents thought I was destined to fail, I'd make sure to prove them wrong in ways they couldn't even imagine. I grabbed a notebook and started scribbling ideas. What did I want to do? What was I good at? Growing up in my family's suffocating world, I had been trained in everything from business etiquette to public speaking. I had the skills. I just needed to use them in my own way. As I made my list, Sarah walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "You look intense this morning," she said, handing me a mug. "What's going on?" "I'm done feeling sorry for myself," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to build something they can't ignore." Her eyes lit up. "Now that's the Amelia I know. What's the plan?" I hesitated. "I don't have all the details yet, but I know I want to start my own business. Something small, something meaningful." Sarah grinned. "You've got this. And if you need help, I'm here." Her support meant everything. I didn't have much, but I had friends who believed in me. That was more than enough to get started. Starting a business was harder than I'd imagined. I spent hours researching, jotting down ideas, and reaching out to anyone who might have advice. I decided to open a small pop-up bakery. Baking had always been a passion of mine, a rare escape from the rigid expectations of my upbringing. Using the tips I'd learned from countless online tutorials, I made a batch of cupcakes and brought them to the diner. My coworkers were my guinea pigs, and to my surprise, they loved them. "These are amazing, Amelia," one of them said, taking another bite. "You could totally sell these." Encouraged by their reactions, I started small, selling baked goods at local markets on my days off. The first time someone bought one of my cupcakes, I felt a rush of pride. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One Saturday at the market, I noticed a woman lingering near my stall. She was impeccably dressed, her sharp eyes scanning my setup. After a moment, she walked up and bought a cupcake. "This is incredible," she said after taking a bite. "Do you run a bakery?" "Not yet," I admitted. "This is just a pop-up for now." She handed me her card. "Call me if you ever want to expand. I invest in small businesses, and I think you have potential." I stared at the card in disbelief. Her name was Catherine Bennett, and a quick Google search later revealed that she was a well-known entrepreneur. I couldn't believe someone like her had taken an interest in me. Over the next few weeks, I worked harder than ever. Between my shifts at the diner and baking late into the night, I barely had time to sleep. But every cupcake I sold brought me one step closer to my goal. Catherine and I stayed in touch, and she gave me invaluable advice. "Focus on your branding," she said during one of our calls. "What makes your bakery unique? What's your story?" At first, I hesitated to share my past. But then I realized that my story was what set me apart. I wasn't just another baker. I was someone who had fought to rebuild her life from scratch. I decided to name my bakery Rising Flower, a nod to my journey and resilience. A year after being disowned, I opened the doors to my first brick-and-mortar bakery. It was a small, cozy space, but it was mine. The grand opening was an emotional day. Sarah was there, of course, along with my coworkers from the diner and a handful of loyal customers who had supported me from the start. As I stood behind the counter, watching people enjoy my baked goods, I felt a sense of pride I'd never known before. This was more than a business. It was proof that I could thrive without my family's money or influence. But my journey was far from over. The bakery's success didn't go unnoticed. One afternoon, as I was restocking the display case, the doorbell jingled. I looked up and froze. My mother stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shock and something I couldn't quite place. Was it regret, or just curiosity? "Well," she said, her voice cool and clipped, "I didn't expect to find you here." I straightened my apron, forcing myself to stay calm. "What are you doing here?" She looked around, taking in the rustic charm of the bakery. "I heard about this place. I didn't realize it was yours." Her words were a slap in the face. She hadn't come to support me. She'd come to satisfy her curiosity. "I don't need your approval," I said firmly. "This is my life now." She raised an eyebrow. "We'll see how long it lasts." As she walked out, I felt a familiar pang of hurt. But this time it didn't break me. If anything, it only strengthened my resolve. My mother's visit lingered in my mind for days, not as a wound but as fuel. Her doubt was just another obstacle I'd crush underfoot. If she wanted to see me fail, she'd have to keep watching while I soared. The bakery grew busier by the week. Word spread quickly, and soon I wasn't just serving locals. I was attracting food bloggers, influencers, and even small-time journalists. One particularly busy Saturday, a reporter from the local paper came in to interview me. "Your story is inspiring," she said, setting her recorder on the counter. "From heiress to entrepreneur. People love a good comeback. What drives you?" I paused, considering her question. "Redemption," I said finally. "Not just proving others wrong, but proving to myself that I'm more than what they said I was." The article ran a week later with the headline, "Rising Flower: How One Woman Reclaimed Her Life Through Baking." It was surreal seeing my name in print, but even more surreal was what came next. The day after the article was published, the bell above the bakery door jingled, and I looked up to see someone I hadn't expected. My younger brother, Lucas. He was hesitant, standing awkwardly by the door. He looked different, more mature, but also more subdued. The confident smirk he always wore had been replaced by something softer. "Amelia," he said, almost a whisper. "Lucas," I replied, my tone cautious. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "I read the article. I wanted to see you." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him to leave, to remind him that he hadn't stood up for me when I needed him most. But another part of me, the part that missed my little brother, softened. "How's everyone?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Mom and Dad are the same," he said with a shrug. "But things aren't great at home. They don't talk about it, but I think they regret what they did." I raised an eyebrow. "Do they? Or are they just upset I'm not begging to come back?" He didn't answer, which told me all I needed to know. Over the next few weeks, Lucas became a regular visitor. He'd stop by the bakery after school or on weekends, helping out when things got busy. At first, I kept my guard up, unsure of his motives. But the more time we spent together, the more I saw glimpses of the brother I'd once adored. One evening, as we closed up shop, he finally opened up. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for not standing up for you. I was scared of losing them, but I lost you instead." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd thought of my family as a monolith, cold, unyielding, and unloving. But Lucas's apology reminded me that there had been good moments too, moments worth holding on to. "I appreciate that," I said quietly. "But if you're here to play peacemaker, it won't work. I'm not going back." "I know," he said. I wanted you to know I'm proud of you." With Lucas's support, the bakery reached new heights. He suggested marketing ideas like partnering with local schools for fundraising events, which brought in even more customers. For the first time, I felt like I had a family member in my corner. But success brought new challenges. Managing the bakery was becoming overwhelming, and I needed help. That's when Sarah stepped in. "You've built something incredible, Amelia," she said one night as we shared a bottle of wine. "Let me help you take it to the next level." We became business partners, expanding the bakery's menu and launching a catering service. It wasn't long before Rising Flour became a household name in the city. One evening, as I was closing up, the door opened, and my father walked in. The sight of him in my bakery felt surreal. He looked older, more tired, but his presence still carried the weight of authority. "Amelia," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "We need to talk." I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. "I'm listening." He hesitated, his eyes scanning the bakery. "You've done well for yourself. Better than I expected." "Thanks," I said flatly. "But I doubt you're here to congratulate me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake. We made a mistake. Your mother and I. We were too harsh. We let our pride get in the way." I stared at him, waiting for the apology I'd longed to hear for years. But it didn't come. Instead, he said, "Your mother isn't well. She's been asking for you." My chest tightened. Despite everything, a part of me still cared. But I wasn't ready to let him off the hook. "It's funny how you're only here now that things are falling apart," I said, my voice cold. "Where were you when I needed you?" He looked down, guilt etched across his face. "I'm sorry, Amelia. Truly. But we need you." For the first time, the power dynamic between us had shifted. He was no longer the unshakable figure I'd grown up fearing. He was just a man, humbled by his own mistakes. "I'll think about it," I said, turning away. "But I'm not making any promises." That night I couldn't sleep. Memories of my mother flooded my mind, both the good and the bad. I thought about the way she used to brush my hair as a child, singing softly under her breath. I thought about the slap that had marked the end of our relationship. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? I spent the next few days grappling with my father's visit. His words echoed in my mind, mingling with old memories I'd worked so hard to suppress. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let them deal with the mess they had created. But another part, the part that still longed for closure, was curious. What did my father mean when he said my mother wasn't well? Was this some ploy to manipulate me? Or was she truly sick? Lucas noticed the change in my demeanor during one of his visits. "You're quieter than usual," he said, leaning against the counter as I prepped an order. "Something on your mind?" "Dad came by," I admitted, my voice low. His eyes widened. "What? When?" "A few nights ago. He said Mom's been asking for me. That she's not well." Lucas frowned, the carefree energy he usually brought into the bakery suddenly gone. "She's been different lately," he admitted. "Quieter. She doesn't go out as much." But I didn't think it was serious. "Do you think he's telling the truth?" I asked. He hesitated. "I don't know. But if he is, maybe you should see her." After much internal debate, I decided to go. Not for my father, and not even for my mother. I went for myself, to confront the ghosts of my past and find the answers I needed to move forward. When I arrived at the mansion, the sight of it felt both familiar and foreign. The grandeur I once took for granted now felt hollow, like a stage set built to impress but lacking any real warmth. The butler, who had always been kind to me, greeted me with a mix of surprise and relief. "Miss Amelia," he said, bowing slightly. "It's good to see you again." I nodded, unable to muster a smile. "Where is she?" He led me to the sitting room, where my mother was reclined on a chaise lounge, a blanket draped over her legs. She looked frilier than I remembered, her once radiant complexion pale and her eyes tired. But when she saw me, something flickered in her gaze, something that looked like hope. "Amelia," she said softly, her voice trembling. I stood in the doorway, unsure of how to feel. "You wanted to see me?" She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I did. I wasn't sure if you'd come." "I almost didn't," I admitted, my tone colder than I intended. Why now, Mom? Why ask for me after everything you said and did? She looked down, her hands trembling as they clutched the edge of the blanket. Because I was wrong, she whispered. I let my pride and fear ruin our relationship. And now, I might not have much time left to make things right. Her words cut deep, but they weren't enough to erase the years of pain she had caused. You disowned me, Mom, I said, my voice trembling. You told me I was a disgrace. Do you have any idea what that did to me? She flinched as if I had slapped her, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside, determined to make her understand. I had nothing, I continued. No money, no support. I had to figure out how to survive on my own while you and Dad acted like I didn't exist. And now you expect me to forgive you because you're sick. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't look away. I don't expect your forgiveness, she said. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I regret every decision I made that hurt you. You were right, Amelia, about everything. The sincerity in her voice took me by surprise. For the first time, I saw not the cold, controlling woman who had raised me but a flawed, broken person trying to atone for her mistakes. I didn't forgive her that day, but I didn't walk away either. Instead, I stayed for an hour, listening as she shared memories of the times she had been proud of me but had been too stubborn to say so. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was a start. As I left the mansion, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, and a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Back at the bakery, life continued to thrive. Sarah and I were working on plans to open a second location, and our catering service was gaining traction. We had even started hosting baking classes, which quickly became a hit with the community. Despite the success, my mother's words lingered in my mind. I found myself wondering if reconciliation was truly possible, or if our wounds were too deep to heal. One afternoon, as I was teaching a baking class, my father walked in. His presence startled me, and I nearly dropped the tray of cupcakes I was holding. The students fell silent, sensing the tension in the room. Amelia, he said, his voice soft. Can we talk? I hesitated but nodded, leading him to the back office. Once the door closed, I crossed my arms and faced him. What is it now? He looked uncomfortable, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. Your mother told me what she said to you, about admitting she was wrong. And, I prompted, my tone sharp. And, she's not the only one who owes you an apology, he admitted. I failed you, Amelia. I failed as a father. I was so focused on maintaining our image that I forgot what really mattered. His words surprised me, but I wasn't ready to let him off the hook. You didn't just fail me, I said. You abandoned me when I needed you most. That's not something I can forget. I don't expect you to, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But I'm here now, and I want to make things right. It wasn't an instant reconciliation, but my father's visit marked another step in the healing process. Over the next few weeks, he and my mother made more of an effort to reach out, attending my baking classes and supporting the bakery. It was awkward at first, but slowly, the walls between us began to crumble. The dynamic between my parents and me grew more complex as time passed. Their gestures of reconciliation were steady but cautious. My mother started visiting the bakery more often, sitting quietly at a corner table and watching as I worked. She never demanded my attention but always smiled when I caught her eye. One day, as I was restocking the display case, she approached the counter. These are beautiful, Amelia, she said, her voice soft and genuine. Your creativity shines through in everything you do. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to believe her words were sincere, but the scars of her past actions made me wary. Why now, Mom? I asked, my tone guarded. Why make an effort after all this time? She sighed, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her designer purse. Because I realized I've missed out on so much. I thought protecting the family name was the most important thing, but what's a name without the people who carry it? I know I can't undo the damage I've done, but I want to try. Her words tugged at something deep inside me. For years, I'd longed to hear her say something like this, But now that she had, I didn't know how to respond. It's going to take time, I said finally. And it's not just about words. I need to see actions. I understand, she said, a faint smile on her lips. And I'll prove it to you. While my relationship with my parents remained tentative, Lucas proved to be an unwavering source of support. He continued helping at the bakery, offering new ideas and learning the ins and outs of the business. You've got a knack for this? I told him one day as we worked on a catering order together. He grinned. Maybe I've finally found something I'm good at. Honestly, I never thought I'd enjoy working. But this feels different. His enthusiasm was infectious, and it wasn't long before he started taking on more responsibility. He even suggested opening a third location, pitching the idea with a level of passion and detail that surprised me. You've grown up, Lucas, I said, genuinely impressed. I'm proud of you. The words seemed to mean a lot to him, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were truly siblings again. One afternoon, as I was reviewing invoices in the back office, I received a phone call from Catherine Bennett, the investor who had supported me in the early days of my business. Amelia, she said, her voice warm and enthusiastic, I've been following your progress, and I have to say, I'm impressed. Your story, your resilience, it's inspiring. Have you ever thought about franchising? The idea had crossed my mind, but I'd always dismissed it as too ambitious. I don't know, I admitted. It feels like a big step. It is, she agreed. But I think you're ready. If you're interested, I'd love to mentor you through the process. The conversation left me buzzing with excitement and nerves. Franchising would mean taking Rising Flower to a whole new level, but it also came with risks. I knew I'd need to discuss it with Sarah and Lucas before making any decisions. As I prepared for the next phase of my business, an unexpected discovery rocked my world. While cleaning out the office at the bakery, I found an envelope addressed to me. Inside was a letter from my mother, dated shortly after I had been disowned. The letter was raw and unfiltered, filled with regret and sorrow. She wrote about how she had stayed awake at night wondering if she'd made the right decision, how she'd kept tabs on me through mutual acquaintances, and how proud she was of my courage, even if she couldn't admit it at the time. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. The letter was proof that she had cared all along, even if she hadn't shown it. Armed with the letter, I decided to confront my mother. I found her sitting in the garden at the mansion, her favorite spot. She looked up as I approached, her expression wary but hopeful. I found this, I said, holding up the letter. Why didn't you send it? She looked down, her hands trembling. Because I was a coward, she admitted. I wanted to reach out, but I was afraid you'd reject me. I didn't think I deserved your forgiveness. Her honesty disarmed me. You should have tried, I said, my voice breaking. Maybe things would have been different. I know, she said, her eyes glistening with tears. But I'm here now, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. For the first time, I saw her not as the cold, controlling woman who had hurt me, but as someone who was deeply flawed and genuinely remorseful. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. With Catherine's guidance, Sarah, Lucas, and I began preparing to launch the first franchise of Rising Flower. The process was grueling, but the excitement of bringing our brand to new communities kept us going. On the day of the grand opening for the franchise, my entire family showed up, my mother, my father, and Lucas. Seeing them together, standing in the crowd and cheering for me, was a moment I'd never expected. Felt like a full-circle moment, a testament to how far I'd come. Years later, Rising Flower had become a nationwide brand, with franchises in dozens of cities. My parents, once my greatest critics, became some of my biggest supporters. My mother, now frail but still sharp, often visited the bakery, proudly telling anyone who would listen that her daughter was the founder. But the greatest victory wasn't the success of the business or even the reconciliation with my family. It was the person I had become. I was no longer the naive heiress or the disowned outcast. I was Amelia, a woman who had fought for her dreams and won. As I stood in the original bakery, now a landmark in the city, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The journey had been painful, but it had shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And as I watched a new generation of bakers learn their craft in the space I'd built, I knew I'd created something that would outlast me.